RotoGrinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blenderhead, Blender HD. If you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Friday. And you know what we do on Fridays? It's Fighting Friday. We talk about the MMA slate, the UFC Nashville card coming up tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. We got a 12-fight card. DraftKings got, 200 to first, 100,000 to first, whatever. The large field contest. We'll be talking primarily about that. Hit that thummy thumb button. Hit the thummy thumbs. Give me the thummy thumbs. You know how much I love the thummy thumbs in the morning. This is your free MMA content here at RotoGrinders. If you want the breakdowns of all the fights, right, with Liam and Mike. Do you want Squirrel Patrol's tournament takes, or I don't know what that column is called. Is his underdog picks, the expert survey. You want lineup HQ, the projections, everything. Just sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Click on that link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. If you got any questions, obviously post them in the YouTube chat. We got a 12-fight card. Remember, what do we do? What do we do every week? Especially since we're playing large field GPPs. We look for the two most important contextual variables that will make the nut lineup more probable or less probable, right? What is it going to look like? Okay, so we have a 12-fight card, which is right in the middle. Okay, large cards, we favor ceilings over win equity. Small cards, we favor win equity over. We always love a ceiling, but especially with the underdogs, right? On a large card, an underdog at 7,400 that puts up 72 points probably doesn't make the nut lineup, the optimal lineup. On a small card, 9-fight card, dude, if you get six fighters that win, and get an underdog that wins, that could be fine. This is right in the middle. Okay, so neither way, I would not necessarily call this like, oh, you can't play certain underdogs. In fact, a lot of the underdogs have ceilings anyway. A lot of the underdogs, they'll win by knockout. They'll win by wrestling. They'll win by something, right? So, I think everyone is in, at some point, everyone is in play. I know Jessica Andrade is a sizable underdog against Tatiana Suarez, but, we've seen Andrade finish people before. Big underdog, but like not a no one, right? Rob Font in the main event is only 6,900. A 5-round decision win, he's probably going to be optimal. Ludovic Klein could get a knockout. Barcelos, Jackson, and Durden all have, wrestling in their back pocket, right? Ode Osborne could knock someone out, right? We got people here. We got people here ceiling-wise. So I'm not sure how much, the difference between ceiling and win equity, right? Because most of the time, if those people win, they may put up a lot of points anyway. And the second contextual variable are the spreads of the fights. Okay, I'm going to go to my sheet right here. I got this filled in. This from yesterday, 2 days ago. Some of these lines may have moved a little. The ITD lines for the Woodson Bazooka, how do you pronounce that? Bazooka fight. I can't even find. I found the round 1 ones, but the round inside the distance one, I just kind of said like anyone at plus 1,000 in the round 1 is probably around plus 450 inside the distance. So I kind of like filled that in. But weird, a little bit of weird, this slate, that the highest priced fighter is not the biggest favorite. Not even close to the biggest favorite. Sean Woodson at 9,600 is overpriced, right? If we reprice this based on DraftKings pricing, we'd have, Suarez at 1, Sanhagen at 2, 3 Mondays, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 fighters before you get to Woodson. So Woodson would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, Woodson would be like 8,800 or something like that. 8,800, 8,900. He's 9,600. Okay, the reason for that is because he had a last-minute replacement, for his opponent, like a week ago, like when they came out with the pricing. Like he's already gone through multiple opponents. Okay, so originally, like he was supposed to fight someone, and then there was a replacement like 2 weeks ago, and then that guy can't fight, so they replaced him with this other guy, and that's when the pricing was, for that guy, and then that guy can't make it. So now they got Dennis Bazooka, or whatever his name is in. And the fight is much more closely lined now. But of course, DraftKings doesn't, once they have a salary, they don't change it. So they just added Bazooka at 7,500 and left Woodson at 9,600. And obviously also with Woodson's kind of style, like it's not all that ceiling friendly to begin with. So even if he was a minus 400 favorite over here, and he'd probably be fairly low owned anyway. All right, Fernando Rodney in chat says Sean Woodson not worth it this week. Yeah, probably not. Probably, all things probable. But it also means he's going to be lower owned. I don't know how low owned, but he could be significantly lower owned. But we look at the spreads of the fights. Like Suarez is about a 4-1 favorite. Sandhagen is about 3-1 favorite. We got some 2-1s, but we got a lot of fights that are within pick'em range, 2-1 or less, 3-2 or less. Right? We got the Carantillo fight. I mean, obviously the Woodson fight, the Bozer fight, the Almabayev fight, the Wells fight, Jinjuku, Lopez, that are competitively lined. The closer the spreads of the fights, the more and more probability of lower salary lineups being the nuts become apparent. Doesn't mean it's more probable. It's just saying that on a slate with multiple minus 500 favorites, most likely the nut lineup is going to be a lineup that's like 49.5 plus, 49K plus, like something like that. For a slate with a lot of pick'ems, it basically just means that like guys are like, do you want to pay 9,100 for Bahamondes at minus 225? Well, on another slate, a $9,100 fighter could even be like minus 325. Right? They have to put up a lot more points, and they're not, guaranteed to win in any sense. They're not as much of a favorite. So we have a lot of fights in this middle range that, dude, you could see 4 underdogs, 5 underdogs win this slate. And with some of these dogs, I mean, they could put up 100 plus points. Knockouts, wrestling. So the probability of lineups that are like 48.5, 48K, 2,000 on the table are much more viable this slate than on other slates where the spreads of the fights are much wider. So take that into account. Also, it's a weird thing. We don't have an $8,200, $8,000 fight, right? It's gonna be much harder. I mean, I think that's because there's no 8,200, 8,000 fight. I think it's going to increase the ownership of this Lopez Tucker fight, 8,300, 7,900, because you're going to get like stuck. You're going to get stuck construction wise in this range. Because like if you build, like we just go like with a hand build. I mean, the most popular favorites are going to be Suarez and Sandhagen. Probably after that is Carantillo, right? So people are going to make this construction. Well, that's what we're doing. You're going through what's the construction going to look like? Can you play Lopez in this? Like you really can't do that. Right, I could see this being a cash lineup, cash type lineup. Suarez, Sandhagen, Carantillo, Lopez, Font, Klein. Obviously, probably shouldn't. I mean, probably not going to stack in GPPs. But if this thing goes the distance for 5 rounds, maybe Font puts up 75 points in a decision loss. And if all the favorites win, maybe that's 6,900. It's a little bit more viable than normal, right? I don't do it, but if you said, "Hey, I'm gonna go for," I mean, I wouldn't do it in this configuration. I wouldn't play Suarez, Sandhagen, and Carantillo together in a GPP, and then also play Font. I mean, this is more like stuff that you do in double ups. But playing Font, I mean, playing Font in general. Like without Sandhagen. Like if this goes 5 rounds, I mean Rob Font and pretty much all the favorites win. It's hard for him not to be the highest scoring underdog in 5 rounds of striking, right? Of course, in a stack, you also need Sandhagen to put up 120 points. It's a little bit tougher if Font is already getting like 75. Yeah, I guess it's possible. It's a 12 fight card. But if we only played like 2 out of Suarez, Sandhagen, and Carantillo. Like people, like I'm just going through like lineups that people will make. So let's say they don't play Suarez and they play Sandhagen and Carantillo, right? Or they just play Sandhagen and Suarez, and now you have to go in the mid range. So if you're not playing Carantillo, maybe you play Damon Jackson against him. I think that's going to be a very popular fight on both sides. Because Damon Jackson's win condition is probably putting up a lot of points, taking Carantillo down and submitting him, wrestling. Oh, no, Carantillo is fine on the mat also. Right, so you have here 79-67. Right, people will play Dennis Bazuchka maybe. Carlston Harris. That Wells-Harris fight probably going to be pretty popular. If you take the Harris side here, 8,100. You take Bazuchka, whatever, then you end up getting stuck in this range where you're going to be playing like you're going to play at least one person from Wells down to Harris. Even if you play Wells in this lineup, go here, Wells, Sandhagen, Suarez, Jackson, Wells, 7,700, right? And then you go like Bazuchka, and then you get Kevin Tuck, right? And if you go even further down, you go to like Barcelos, or Klein, you could play Diego Lopez. Now, is this one of this type of things? Oh, avoid that construction. Well, without an $8,200, $8,000 fight, and when we have a $9,600 guy that may not be worth $9,600, like it's hard to avoid not playing someone, because obviously if Suarez if you're building Suarez, Sandhagen, Carantillo lineups, you go, I'll avoid the mid range and play like Jake Hadley or something, or you can't even do that. Go down really low. Right, Klein. Like, what's the lowest you could go? If you do Suarez, Sandhagen, Carantillo, you do Klein, Barcelos, then you have 8,000, and you could take any one of these, right? You could take Tucker, Jacoby, Harris, Ode. You're just stuck in there's so few combinations here, especially for large field GPPs. Like once you shove in a $9,500, $9,300, and $8,900 fighter, your average remaining player salary is $7,433. And you can't play Font and Andrade without stacking. So you're stuck with like the lowest you could do is Klein. You have 7,600 remaining average between two fighters. Like the best you could do, you're still playing three underdogs. So what's the combination of all these underdogs? It would be a factorial, right? Of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's about, and then you have to choose 3 of them. So it's not just 10 factorial. It's like 10 factorial over 3 factorial. In large field contest, I'm not sure how many combinations are going to be like under 5s. Especially when we have Suarez at 47% projected owned, Sandhagen at 50% projected owned, and Carantillo at 42%. I think an easy way of avoiding dupes, or at least getting more under 5s. You don't mind. Let's just be clear. You don't have to be unique in large field. I would just try to aim for under 5. If you're duped 2 or 3 times, fine. You're fine. That's good. You're duped 27 times, you're not good. You're duped 84 times. That's not, you can't win in the long run playing those types of lineups. So the easy way is to just group out Suarez, Sandhagen, Carantillo, max 2. You could, you may still run into some highly duped lineups even with that. You do max 1, I think you're fine. If you did Suarez, Sandhagen, Carantillo, Font, you may not even have to throw Font in there. So I'm not sure you need to necessarily throw in a Wells or a Lopez or any of those type of. You may not need to. But the main 3 are going to be. Obviously, you could tell by the ownership right here, and especially at the high range. people are going to be building more barbell lineups. It's weird because last week we were talking about, oh, people are building in their mid-range. So I'm building more barbell lineups. Here, people are building barbell lineups. So I'd be more inclined to be in the mid-range. Right? Like if you play like Almabayev against Osborne. Like if you just got like, what happens if you'd still stay in the middle? Like you still play Lopez and you still play Wells. Or it's going to be decently owned. Like, is there a way to, like, let's see. Let's say you still play Jackson against Carantillo. You play Durden against Hadley, maybe? Kammer against Bozer. You still have 9,200. You could do Sanhagen and Baumondes or Phillips or something like that. Yeah, I'd be much more inclined to build these types of lineups. You start with one of Suarez or Sanhagen instead of putting them both together. And then playing a Baumondes or Kyler Phillips. Play Hadley instead of Carantillo. Bozer's a tough sell, although he'll be low on. I mean, the thing about my spreadsheet is that it relies very heavily on predicting ownership. Like I have all the betting lines, I have the RG projections, the RG ownership. I made a little bit of adjustment to ownership, only preliminarily. A ceiling, a kind of average kind of stealing metric. And then I put them all together and compare that to ownership. And then I come up with this rating, which is essentially a leverage rating. Are they effective? Are they efficiently owned? Inefficiently owned? Like as of right here, I have Dustin Jacoby. If he comes in at 19% is over-owned in comparison to the ratings above him. I also have Wells. If he comes in at 34%, I have him as over-owned. Kyler Phillips, if he comes in at 26%, I have him as over-owned. Hadley, maybe not so much. On the underdog side, most of the underdogs are about efficiently owned. Like, there's nothing that stands out here other than like maybe Jacoby's a little too high owned. Maybe Carlston Harris is a tad. If he's going to be 27, maybe he should only be 24. I mean, for the most part, there's not. If you see the ratings here, there's not that drastic of a difference. Like I would say, like Ludovic Klein is a little underowned at 18% if he comes in at 18%. But it's not that dramatically different than like Damon Jackson at 23%. Like it's marginal. Then at the top, you have, to me, that obviously based on the lines, minus 175 inside the distance, the highest rated fighter is Tatiana Suarez. And I have her, if she comes in at 48% ownership, she'd actually be a little bit under-owned. Sanhagen I would say, Suarez and Sanhagen are just like, they're inside the distance line in comparison to so many other fighters on the slate. Because you have Woodson plus 240, Phillips plus 205, Bozer plus 225, Almabayev plus 215. Like these are favorites that have like less than a 30% chance of finishing. Compared to Suarez and Sanhagen, who have 52 and 64% chance. If you take out the VIG, it's obviously a little bit lower. But then you have up here, then you have Sean Woodson. Like to me, like the two more interesting plays are Woodson and Bozer. They're the two that people are going to avoid, are going to probably avoid like the plague. To pay $9,600 for Sean Woodson with the worst inside the distance, with the worst line than like half of the favorites. Like, dude, he's going to need a knockout. I mean, he's going to need a finish. I mean, how else is he going to... 9,600 is almost like you need the quick win bonus. Unless for some odd reason that Suarez loses. Sanhagen loses. Bahamondes puts up a 62-point score in a win, a boring win. Phillips only puts up 82. It could be Woodson puts up 98 points, and it happens to be the second highest score on the slate. I mean, it could happen. There is a probability, there is a percent of the time that does happen. It's not a high probability, but it does. But, I mean, all I have to do is compare it to ownership, and if he's only going to be 15% owned, you could do worse. I mean, the pricing makes it, I mean, the difference between Woodson and Sanhagen is like 300, and their leverage rating is close. So it comes down to the point of like Sanhagen is, as far as my rating is concerned, leverage as of the numbers that are currently here. Sanhagen is just as viable as Woodson at once you compare to ownership, right? 51% to 15%. Now, if you tell me Woodson's going to be 8% owned and Sanhagen's going to be 74% owned, then it switches the other way. The same thing could be said for Tanner Boser. Like, no one ever wants to play Tanner Boser. He's 8,700, minus 145. Probably should be a couple hundred cheaper against Alexa Kamor. Plus 225 inside the distance, which is not great for 8,700. But, I mean, his win condition is essentially a knockout, right? He doesn't do that often, but, I mean, it is, right? And if he's going to be 12% owned, and he has if 12% owned and a 31% chance of finishing, 14% of the first round, it's viable. Is it probable? No. Is it viable at that ownership? Is it something that I'm going to build 20 lineups and have him in 17 of them? I probably wouldn't do that. The problem with Tanner Boser is that if he wins via decision, like, I can't possibly see how he scores that many points. Like, he's going to have like 14 strikes around, and he's going to win with a 62-point score or something like that. That's why more people are going to play Alexa Kamor, because no one's going to play Boser. 12%. But yeah, but if you bump that up, like if you bump that up to, let's say, 18%, and then I wouldn't touch him in a 10-foot pole. That's how the margins on the ownership are so thin, right? If I change mine, right, the RG has it at we have it at the 13, right? You see, my rating is 0.97. So if that came back down to like 0.92, Al Mabayev would be as good as him, right? So at what level? Right, by a matter of like 2 percentage points in ownership. That's it. The difference between 12 versus 13 versus 14 is that difference. Now, obviously, on the other side, if he's going to be 9% owned, then look, you see it lights up. The margin on these things are very thin. Very, very thin. If you're off on ownership by, at some points, 2-3%, 4 or 5. If you're up by like 5% with someone, especially the lower people, like the difference between 12 and 17, or the difference between 12 and 7. That's the difference between, I only played him in 2 out of 20 lineups, and then find out that you should have played him in 16 out of 20 lineups, and vice versa. I played this guy in 16 out of 20 lineups, and he came in, instead of 12% owned, he came in at 18% owned. If I had known that, I would have just X'd him out. Right? You get into that problem. But yeah, but obviously, they're going to be the 2 lowest owned favorites. And then Bahamondes is right behind there, because, Bahamondes has similar win condition as both. 9,100, you're going to need, you got 5 minutes. You got a first-round knockout against Ludovic Klein. He's not really a prolific fantasy scorer. I don't see this being a very high-scoring slate in general. I see a lot of decisions. There are more knockouts in the mid-range, and I think, people are going to go Suarez, Sanhagen, and then focus on the mid-range and try to get away with someone on the bottom. Cody Durden has wrestling. Damon Jackson has wrestling. Ronnie Barcelos has wrestling. To some extent. He's more of a submission grappler than a wrestler. I don't know how many people are going to play Bazooka with them coming in on like 4 days' notice. But the fact that people are probably not playing Woodson means that I'm expecting Bazooka to be higher owned than Woodson is because of price. But there you go. Our first look at the UFC Nashville slate tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern is locked. Me and Mike Brown will be on tomorrow for crunch time, right? Free on this channel, brought to you by FanDuel. So you can tune in then. After I build, I'm probably building 20, 30 lineups. So I still need to obviously, update. I mean, obviously the lines will move a little, projections will change a little, but this is kind of the first look. From an underdog perspective, like that's the one thing that sticks out to me the most is that at the current projected ownership that I have, there's no like underdog that's like, oh, okay, this is the guy that I want to have more of compared to the field than others. Like it just feels like right now it feels like there's not that dramatic of an edge on this slate based on what I'm seeing. Other than construction differences. The edge here based on the ownership that I see here and the lines that are currently out from just like odds and projection versus ownership thing, I think it's fairly efficient. It's more efficient than a lot of slates. But from a construction standpoint, from a duplication perspective, I think that's where the edge is on this slate. Where they're going to see a lot of Suarez, Sanhagen, Carantillo lineups. Or at least two of those. You're more likely to see Sanhagen, Carantillo because it's the 5-round main event. But you still see Suarez, Carantillo lineups also. So, just going to see a lot of them. They're going to be overrepresented. Now, that's the most probable lineup. I mean, just understand that we're playing a game of probability. You're not looking to play the most probable thing. You're looking to play the most profitable thing. In the long run, over and over again. So if you're going to play lineups that are duplicated 80 to 100 times, it may be nice to win that $3,200 or $2,800 or whatever, $1,800 when first place is supposed to be $100,000 or $150,000. It'd be nice on that specific day. Like, oh, God, look, I played 5 lineups. I paid $90 and I got back $2,200. Yeah, but you could have played lineups that got back $100,000, and you chose not to. The lineup that you played is a little bit more probable, but much less profitable. Wow, I made it pretty much the whole show without coughing until the end. Justin Sports asks, do you ever 150 in MMA? Rarely. So a 75 I'll do. Rarely 150. I would have to see a humongous edge. Or they have to make it so that it's like a $6 entry. They never do that in MMA. Like in baseball, basketball, football. Yeah, if it's, $4 mini home run explosion, $50K to first. But they're increasing the size of the contest, but only making it like a $5 entry. Then I may play. Then I may play 150. Even then, a lot of times I'd up 100. I mean, you can. It's just more risky. Playing 150 lineups is not easy. It's much easier to play less lineups. On this slate, I'll probably, depending on where this goes, I make 20 lineups. I'll play 20 into the 18. Or I may do something where I play like 10 into the 18 and 5 into the $8 10K to first, 5 in the $5. I mean, I'll play 500, $1,000 or whatever. And then depending on if I see a decent enough edge, I'll play the 555, right, with one entry. That if you're playing the 555, you're playing like the single entry 300, 400 people in the contest. I mean, you could get away with doing like Suarez, Sanig, and Carantillo lineups. I mean, or playing two of them. Like maybe I don't play all three, but playing two of them, you can get away. You don't need the nuts in those lineups in those contests. But I'm much more likely the large field to put a cap on the three of them to max one. And make sure that I'm getting under fives. The small field stuff, I mean, if you get a lineup that's duplicated 4 times, that's bad. But you also don't need the nuts. Right? You don't need the nuts in those contests. But when there's 35,000 entries in there, you're gonna need the winning lineup is gonna be more and more likely the best possible lineup, the optimal, the nut lineup. So tune in tomorrow to Crunch Time. There'll be a half an hour before lock, I believe 5:30 tomorrow, depending on when baseball is scheduled. Maybe it'll be 5. You'll see the thumbnail. It'll be here on the YouTube channel. Subscribe if you're new. Hit that thummy thumb. Hit the thummy thumbs on your way out the door, right? Like, subscribe, do all those things. Notification bells, right? Put those on. And yeah, go through August, heading into NFL season. We'll be talking about baseball. We'll talk about football. We'll be talking about whatever you want. If you have questions, I got answers. So email them in. questions@theoryofdfs.com. And as always, if you want to learn more about, game theory, strategy of daily fantasy sports, as well as the theory of DFS for advanced players, right? You can get my tools. I use my Excel tools, the James McCool's Excel tools that are part of this course for MMA. I use the duplication predictor, right? Especially in MMA. Showdown, you got to use something like that, right? You cut and paste the projections, you cut and paste your lineups, salaries and everything, it'll show you. And then based on these lineups, this is predicted to be duplicated on average 6 times. This lineup is predicted to be duplicated on average 20 times. A lot of times, instead of making 20, I don't just make 20 lineups. I'll make 200 lineups and then choose 20 from there. Then I'll use a tool like that to okay, let me get rid of the lineups that are over 10 at least, if not over 5. And then from there, then it's okay, what 20 do I want to play? And it's just as simple as cutting and paste. You just download it. You download your lineups from Lineup HQ. You export just like you would put in your CSV. You cut and paste in the appropriate fields in that tool. You set what the field size is. 35,000. You press the button and it'll show you. And then you could trim based on that. You could say, I'll get rid of these lineups. Get rid of any lineup that's above 20, get rid of. Any lineup that's above 10 with this fighter, get rid of. So it's very useful. You're gonna need that for NFL. You're gonna need that for NFL Showdown coming up this year. It saves a ton of time. A ton. Oh, it's so time consuming to do all that manually. Eyeballing stuff. No, my MMA process I could do probably in under 10 minutes. No problem. Now, do I fiddle with it more than that? Yes, but I mean, I could. If it was 10 minutes before lock, 15 minutes before lock, I go bing bang boom, run this, run that, ding ding, and get rid of that. Okay, did cut and paste, cut and paste into the CSV and I'm upload. I can do that. Most of the time, I just screw around with things. Do I really want to do? But what types of lineups are like this? And do I want to have really barely any of that person? Do I want to have 2 lineups of that? Yeah, I hem and haw over portfolio management more than anything else. But this saves a ton of time. You can check that out at theoryofdfs.com. Pick up the Fundamentals Masterclass, 15 hours, as well as the Advanced Players Guide and Excel tools, theoryofdfs.com. And I'll be back next week. So I'm here answering your DFS strategy questions, as always, Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.